All right, let's get right into it. In any organization, any room you walk into, there's the power structure you can see, the org chart, the fancy titles, the people who get all the attention. But underneath all that, there's a second, invisible architecture, a hidden network that actually controls the flow of everything that matters. Today, we're not just going to look at it, we are going to deconstruct it piece by piece. Let that sink in for a second. Power isn't always loud. It's not always the person at the head of the table. No, true, lasting influence is often quiet. It's positioned just out of sight, operating on a level that most people never even realize exists. So who are these unseen players? Well, that's the paradox we're digging into, the incredible, almost unbelievable power of being invisible. So here's our dossier for this whole breakdown. First, we'll map out the hidden landscape in the shadow org chart. Then, we're going to define the problem with what we call the brokerage trap. After that, we'll deconstruct the broker's engine with the social switchboard and expose the mental exploits in the psychology of control. And finally, don't worry, we're going to equip you with countermeasures in the direct node protocol and leave you with a new way of thinking, drawing your own lines. Right, section 1, let's get our bearings. You know, we're all trained to look at the official hierarchy, right? The names in the boxes, the solid lines connecting them. But I'm telling you, that's often just a decoy. The real power, the true center of control, it lies in that invisible web of connections that decides who knows what and, more importantly, when they know it. This is the world where power brokers live and breathe. They're these silent architects who get that influence isn't about barking orders. It's about controlling the story before an order is even thought of. You know the type. The person who always seems to know about a project before it's announced, or somehow has all the details of a reorg weeks before anyone else. They operate in the gaps, the spaces between people and teams, and by controlling the information flowing through those gaps, they control the entire game without ever having to put their name on the line. So let's define the problem this creates. When a broker's influence runs wild, it's not just some hurdle you have to jump over. Oh no. It is a carefully built strategic prison designed to keep you dependent and basically neutralize your ability to get anything done. This is what we call the brokerage trap. Have you ever felt this? The glass wall? You do everything right, your work is top-notch, your logic is airtight, your idea is a slam dunk, but somehow it just dies on the vine. It hits this invisible barrier. Key emails go unanswered, crucial meetings keep getting pushed, and you get this sinking feeling that a decision was made about you long before you even walked into the room. That feeling of frustration, that's not in your head. That's the feeling of smacking right into the glass wall that a power broker built. Now, what's really fascinating here is the difference in how this power actually works. So on the left, you've got positional authority. That's your CEO, your director. Their power is obvious, it's granted from the top, and they're held accountable. They are usually the target of influence. But on the right, that's brokerage power. This isn't about a title, it's about occupying what social scientists call a structural hole, which is really just a fancy way of saying a gap in the communication network. This person doesn't give orders. They shape the information that leads to the orders. Their power is invisible, totally ambiguous, and it comes entirely from the network itself. They're not the target, they are the architect of the whole situation. And make no mistake, this trap has a serious psychological price tag. First, you get learned helplessness. It feels like you're fighting a ghost, because the broker never attacks you head on. They just sort of subtly edit you out of the picture. Then comes strategic ambiguity. Your boss says yes, but the project never gets the resources it needs. That yes slowly morphs into a maybe or a later, and you have no idea why. This creates a massive cognitive load. You end up spending so much brain power trying to decode the hidden rules and play the political game that your actual work starts to suffer. And then there's the final, most dangerous stage, status dependency. You realize the only way to get anything done is through the broker, so you start asking them for permission to succeed. You completely give up your own power. So how do they do it? How do they pull this off? Let's move on and actually deconstruct the engine of their control. If the broker is an architect, this section is their blueprint. We're talking about the social switchboard, the core system they use to manage all these connections and wield their influence. Okay, so the core idea here comes from social network science, and it's called betweenness centrality, but forget the jargon. Think of it like this. Imagine you have two islands, and both islands have valuable stuff, but there's no bridge between them. The person who builds the only boat and starts ferrying people and information back and forth, that person controls the entire economy of both islands. That is the power of a broker. It's not about being popular or knowing the most people. It's about being the only bridge between separate groups that need each other but aren't talking. Their power is all about exclusivity, not popularity. They are the single choke point. And they build this power methodically in 4 distinct phases. First is gap acquisition. They find 2 groups, let's say engineering and sales, that basically speak different languages. They learn to speak both and position themselves as the essential translator. Second, they charge an information toll. Now that they're the bridge, they become a kind of rent seeker. They control the flow, but they only pass on, say, 90% of the information. That little gap creates information asymmetry. And here's the leverage point. Third, and this is the moment control really shifts, is the narrative frame. They not just tell sales what engineering said, they tell sales what engineering meant. By controlling the context, they control the outcome. And finally, there's the access tax. Everyone figures out they have to go through the broker, so people start paying a tax in loyalty and favors just to keep that bridge open. And that, right there, is where the trap slams shut. The crazy part is this whole system just feeds itself. The more people use the broker as the bridge, the more information the broker gets. The more information they have, the more essential they become. And what you end up with is this, a connectivity monopoly. The broker isn't just playing the game anymore. They own the entire board, and everyone else is just a piece they can move around whenever they want. So why? Why do we let this happen? Why do we fall into this trap so easily? Well, to get that, we have to go deeper, into the psychology of it all. See, the broker's strategy is so darn effective because it doesn't just exploit the org chart. It weaponizes some really fundamental parts of our own human nature against us. One of their biggest tools is something called Referent Power. When we see somebody constantly with the boss, whispering in their ear, always walking out of meetings with them, our brains take a shortcut. It's called the halo effect. We just automatically assume that being close to power is power. Think about that junior person who's always seen grabbing coffee with the CEO. We just assume they're in the know, that they have more influence than their title says they do. Brokers are masters at creating this perception. They get to borrow the leader's authority without ever doing the work. And because of this halo, we let our guard down and give them credibility they never actually earned. The second, and maybe even more powerful psychological weapon is loss aversion. Research has shown this again and again. We humans are way more motivated to avoid a loss than we are to achieve a gain. The pain of losing $100 feels way more intense than the joy of finding $100. This isn't some character flaw, it's a survival instinct that's hardwired into our brains. But brokers, they understand this fear instinctively, and they are brilliant at exploiting it. So let me just ask you this straight up. What feels like a bigger threat to you, deep down in your gut? The idea of being controlled by someone, or the idea of being completely excluded from the group? For most of us, the answer is exclusion. It triggers this primal, ancient fear of being kicked out of the tribe, where, survival alone was pretty much impossible. And that's the lever. The broker doesn't need to threaten to get you fired. All they have to do is create the possibility that you might be left off the email chain, or the last to know, or not included in that key meeting. That fear of being isolated, that potential loss of connection, is so powerful that we just become compliant. We would rather pay the broker's little tax and be controlled than risk being cast out into the cold. Okay, so we've mapped the terrain, we've diagnosed the trap, and we've understood the psychology. Now we switch gears from analysis to action. Let's get into the countermeasures. This is the direct node protocol, a clear strategic plan to dismantle a broker's influence and take back your own power. There are 3 core moves to reclaim what I like to call your cognitive sovereignty. First, map the network. In your next big meeting, don't just watch the person speaking, watch the room after they speak. Who does everyone's eyes flick to, even for just a split second, to see how they're reacting? That person is very likely your broker. So label that node. Second, force transparency. When a broker tells you, "Don't worry, I'll pass that along for you," you politely come back with, "That's great, but to save you some time, let's just loop them in on a group email." By moving these private sidebars into shared open spaces, you absolutely destroy the information asymmetry they need to survive. And third, and this is the big one, build redundancy. Never, ever allow one person to be your single point of failure for getting to a key group or individual. Go out of your way to build your own second and third bridges. If you have 3 different ways to get information, no single gatekeeper can ever hold you hostage. Now look, this knowledge is a tool, and you can use it in 2 very different ways. You can become a gatekeeper, creating bottlenecks,
hoarding information and collecting power for yourself. You'll probably be feared, and you might even get some short-term wins, but you'll end up with a brittle, paranoid system. The other path is to be a catalyst. You use your position to create new connections. You share information freely, and you multiply the power of the entire network. You don't just build a bridge, you teach other people how to build their own. You become valued, not feared. That is the only path to real, sustainable influence.
Which brings us to our final section, the master principle that holds all of this together. This isn't just a tactic, it's a whole strategic doctrine for how to see the world. It's about drawing your own lines. So, here's the absolute bottom line. True, lasting influence isn't about having the highest title or being the loudest person in the room. It is about the ownership of the space between people. It's understanding that the real power grid is made up of the lines of communication, trust, and information. And if you're not consciously out there building and shaping those connections for yourself, you can bet that someone else is drawing those lines for you.
And it all comes down to this one simple truth. The person who connects the room controls the room. The entire system we've just deconstructed is built on controlling connections. The psychology it exploits is our deep fear of losing those connections, and the only real countermeasure is to build your own connections. So whether you're trying to navigate these dynamics, protect yourself from them, or use them ethically to make your entire team stronger, this is the fundamental rule. See the connections, understand the gaps, and decide for yourself what lines you want to draw.